Hello there, you're welcome along. It's Golf Weekly 2021. We are excited about the year ahead. First week of January. Nathan Murphy, Happy New Year. Hello.
Happiest of New Year wishes to you, Joe.
And Fionn Davenport, happiest New Year wishes to you also. Hello.
And to you both. Happy New Year, lads.
So here we are. Quiet start to the new year. Goodness me.
What's going on?
Feet up.
Yep.
Relaxed. No end of the world feel at all last night.
I did notice the @Golf Weekly Twitter feed pointed out that still watch the pro golfers queue up to play with Trump. And I thought to myself, well, I wonder, Fionn Davenport, which of us tweeted that? I mean, 3 guesses.
It was me.
No kidding, it was you.
Of course it was me, because Nathan adopted a kind of a humorous take on the whole thing. You had a kind of a more straight bat, like, this is batshit crazy. But Nathan wants to be banned from Twitter for 12 hours so he can get some sleep. Wasn't that the...
Oh, well, I had all these great plans for the new year as to bringing down my digital intake. And then I'm giving myself a free pass last night going, these are the sort of seismic events that you want to be a part of and you got to be watching, you got to be seeing what's happening. But it does sort of prove that even as the world is about to end, people will be online sort of half joking about it.
Yeah, I mean... It's like, obviously there is a kind of a pointed barb in my tweet. I mean, we can talk about it. I think it's completely true. I don't think it's like the number one most important thing, but you know, it does reflect a country that is deeply divided, and well, golf's association with Trump is now thrown into a much starker light. These are difficult times ahead for the PGA and all its associated members, and those of whom, as I saw, was it Dave Hannigan tweeted, any golfer who's played with Trump over the last 4 years really needs to take a long, hard look at themselves, which is, you know, it's a stern thing. It's a stern rebuke, but
it's a long list as well.
It's a pretty. I was going to say is that like it's more like it's much easier to find the ones that haven't played golf with them, I think.
Yeah,
but
so I mean, on the humorous point, and I was on OTB AM this morning, and Jer made the point that initially it was like slightly terrifying, you know, because there's every chance one of those morons has a gun, and are you going to have 20, 30 people shot dead? How many senators shot dead? And then it emerged that they had broke in. Fully not expecting to be able to break in, couldn't believe their luck, and there was a degree of tourism and high farce about the whole thing, and they were stealing stands and posing for pictures and sitting in Nancy Pelosi's chair, and it was just kind of hilarious. I mean, it was farcical, and at that point I think the humor was okay. So like there is a serious side to it because it's so symbolic of so much that is wrong, and the effect of social media included. We as humans and human institutions just can't keep pace with it. And it is really grim and really serious because it does represent some problems that are so difficult to untangle. And then there was just the side of it that was hilarious. And the other thing, actually, because I got up this morning and flicked through all the various news reports. Maybe this is a symptom of us being from a small-ish country where even a person dying in a road traffic accident makes the 6-1 news. The fact that 4 people died last night isn't really like the lead item at all on the news. You know, 4 people died, maybe in a population of 330 million. That just has less of an impact. But like last night was tragic. 4 people died. It's just insane that happened. All the while, the Donald was behaving like a madman.
Well, was he behaving like a madman, or was he? Well, I mean, yes, sure, but like, you know, Godwin's law, even being aware of Godwin's law, which is you have to be careful about where you using certain words, but Donald Trump's a fascist. Like, he's the fascist in the kind of, not in the throwaway insult, I don't agree with your right-wing politics, you're a fascist. I mean, he's an actual fascist. This is a man who, in order to pursue his own goals, will usurp the democratic norm completely. I mean, the phone call to your man in Georgia the other day, but also as well as when you actually break down the tone of his words yesterday, you know, in the morning in front of the White House and saying, we will never rest, we will never rest. His son comes on and goes, This is not the Republican Party anymore. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. Like, it's more or less, he is now dictator in all but actual title, you know. And so what happened yesterday, and sure, and it is important to say that for the most part, most of the people who showed up in protest against the election had no business or interest to break into the grounds of the Congress. So that's only a few hundred people. But when you have Rudy Giuliani, who's going that it's going to be an ordeal by blood or a trial by blood or whatever wording he used yesterday morning, it's like, how on earth does anybody think that what happened yesterday, as extreme and as insane, as unprecedented, I mean, you got to remember, it's not since, is it 1812, since the British stormed the Congress, that there has been anyone invading the House of Congress. But like, how can anybody be left in no doubt that they have fomented this? Donald Trump has fomented this. And that is the hallmark of a fascist. It's the tin pot, cheap, not a particularly good one, but a fascist nonetheless. And yeah, and like, I don't think you can call it anything else.
It's so disappointing that you don't even need to be a particularly good one to inspire so many idiots. I mean, it's really worrying. We see the full scale of humanity, don't we? The geniuses who managed to come up with a vaccine to this virus, and those who won't even take the vaccine for spurious reasons. Like, I don't pay too much attention to that group, the idiots who broke in last night. I'm not interested in them overly. I view them as largely disenfranchised and angry and not that bright or well educated, frankly. If I'm being frank about it, that's how I see them. So the QAnon conspiracy theory stuff was news to me last night because Donny O'Sullivan of CNN fame, who's now Ireland's most beloved reporter, he was talking about how, yeah, good on him. He did great. Yeah. He was talking at length about how so many of those there last night were quoting the QAnon conspiracy theory. And I thought, right, yeah, okay, well, this stuff doesn't interest me generally, but I better actually see what this is. And, you know, Fionn, we were chatting just before coming in there, and you've been aware of this for a long time. So, you know, QAnon conspiracy theory to the effect that Donald Trump's waging a secret war against a pedophile ring at all levels of government and finance and media, etc. I thought, like, it can't be that lame. There's got to be a better conspiracy theory, you know. So surely we could have dreamt up something better than that. How has this, even with, you know, the force that Facebook and social media carries, how can this have permeated into the minds of so many? That's what I just think, unbelievable. It's worrying.
But QAnon is the latest. Sorry, Nathan, go on.
Sorry, I was just, before you probably go on to QAnon, I think, Joe, you described it well there, that I think from the outside, what's often put back on people when you're talking about that Trump mob is that, well, you just don't understand them, that they have suffered, they haven't been given opportunities in life, and because of this, there's this anger in middle America that we simply couldn't understand. Whereas actually, they're young lads who are bored, who are spending 10 hours a day on the internet, on message boards, all riling each other up. Instead of spending 10 hours a day on playing Football Manager, they're just there getting angrier and angrier. And it's not that they've been denied opportunities in life. It's just that they don't have a huge amount going on. So this is their outlet. And somehow it's spewed out into this violence and rage. And Trump has become their de facto leader. That I think at a time, very early in this, was a sense when Trump was first going, that he tapped into a part of America that's voice wasn't heard, which we constantly hear now, obviously, from conservatives, that they're being silenced. But actually, these are just quite uneducated, dull, bored people who found some sort of a weird outlet that is so damaging to everyone else.
And there is no doubt that the genuinely disenfranchised of, say, the Rust Belt were drawn to Trump initially. And I think a lot of those are just very good people who are, in truth, have been screwed by the system. That is unfortunately the nature of the world. And slowly but surely, those with any sense have realized what a crook he is, and, you know, what a nut job he is, and they've withdrawn away from him. And now all Trump has are the loonies. Like, the great irony of the whole thing is, can you imagine privately the disdain Trump has for these people? That's almost the most delicious part of the whole thing.
I mean, the QAnon people are just the latest of a series of fringe groups that have coalesced to kind of give Trump, or to amplify the Trump message. So a couple of years ago, it was the white supremacists who marched in Charlottesville. This year, you hear a lot more about QAnon and as you said, that kind of insane conspiracy theory that's based around that it's about the deep state and how it controls everything, and that it is an extension of this massive pedophile ring. So you might remember the thing that went around, was it maybe a year and a half ago, about the pizza shop in Pennsylvania, about that was a pedophile ring headquarters, and some guy with a gun walked in and wanted to confront them all, and then was disarmed and realized, well, there's actually nothing going on other than if you want to buy deep dish pizza, or I'll have pepperoni, please. But there was no pedophiles. But I mean, what's interesting is that a friend of mine, an American journalist who works in Washington, was saying last night, and I thought it was interesting, in a strange, paradoxical way, the events of yesterday are so extreme and are so unacceptable to the vast majority of Americans that in a weird way, that it has taken the shine off Trumpism for a lot of people who would have, say, forgiven the extreme behavior on Twitter, or the making fun of people that he does, or all of that, and would have seen that more as just Trump showbiz nonsense. There's like, just ignore the way he does it. Sure, he's a bit coarse. Sure, he might say things. Sure, he might make fun of a guy with a disability. But ultimately, Trump is about bringing American jobs back to the heartland. But I think, but my point is that I think for a lot of these people, the events of yesterday will have horrified them.
Well,
they're like, hang on a second, this is not right.
Interesting you say that, because the very person you described there is Jack Nicklaus. It's Jack Nicklaus. Everything you said there about explaining. Well, I mean, we're awaiting. I'm sure. I mean, if it's as lengthy as his most recent post on Donald Trump, then it might take some time. So, getting back to golf, okay, to a point, and we don't have to strictly limit ourselves to golf here, but there is that link. So, on the golfing front, there are two parts to this. One, there is unofficial golf. So there is Jack Nicklaus and friends, the queue of players who have lined up to play with Trump and clearly endorse Trump. So that there's that aspect to golf. And then secondly, there is official golf. So Jeff Shackelford, for instance, on his website said Trump Bedminster is the host of the 2022 PGA Championship. Donald Trump is the founder of the club. Given the events of yesterday, there is no way this major championship can continue at the venue. I mean, Jack Nicklaus and friends, less important, and I don't think they're suddenly all going to become Democrat. Although you would like to think, even in the most weaselly Mike Pence, Mitch McConnell-esque way, they might at least weasel away from Trump, at least. But we'll wait and see.
It's the arsonist who then kind of just puts on the fireman's clothes, afterwards.
But the second point is more interesting to discuss: official golf and Trump.
Yeah, and I think the PGA is in a sticky situation today. However, like, I mean, obviously, I don't know what the minds of the PGA committees are today, but you can only wager and say, this is an awkward one. So there'll be. I mean, yesterday there was calls for him to be impeached. Yesterday there was calls for the 25th Amendment to be invoked, to literally remove him from office because he is no longer mentally capable of performing the duties of president. So today, but here's the thing, the PGA don't have to decide on whether to remove the 2022 PGA Championship, which will take place in May of next year, from Trump Bedminster. I would wager that we will hear very little. Or something to the effect of, well, we're going to examine everything. Obviously, the events are unpalatable to all Americans. We stand against violence and certainly, blah, 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 the hallowed halls of Congress, all that kind of stuff. And we will take our time and look at all our options. And then, fingers crossed, hope that it all dies down. We move on to the next, or the news cycle times 10. And then quietly in May of 2022, the events of January 6th, 2021 are so far in the past that the PGA Championship will go ahead as planned.
I would think that's odds on, Nathan.
Yeah, well, money will talk as well in terms of it being cancelled. If this was to escalate to an extent that Donald Trump is completely toxic to sponsors of golf and those around the US Open, that they feel we simply can't be involved in this. That would be the driving force. But I think Fiona's dead right. What we're going to get, if we get anything over the coming weeks, are statements around we have more violence, that this doesn't represent the American dream, people need to stand back, but no great criticism. And it is, considering what has developed over the last year, almost impossible to predict what is going to happen, firstly in the next 2 weeks with Trump, and after that. Does he quietly just disappear off and play golf? Or is he emboldened by this? Is he going to go to war with the Republican Party? Is he going to run for president? Once again, is he going to be looking at that US Open as he did in 2017 and be front of center like he was at the US Women's Open, where was it the 15th tee behind the par 3 where he had the marquee and he stood there overlooking everybody in this incredibly awkward manner? So I would be, right now I would say chances are it does go ahead there. But things are moving at such a incredibly rapid pace. Like, is it going to be a talking point at the Tournament of Champions? I don't think so. Are players going to be asked about this? Obviously, Tiger isn't there. Rory isn't there. None of the big superstars, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, these players aren't going to say anything that anyone really cares about regarding Donald Trump. Tiger is basically the only one that matters. And we're not going to see Tiger, I presume, for a month or so. He's not going to say anything anyways. So golf will just roll on and we'll pretend none of this ever really happened. Try not to draw too much attention to it.
Like Bryson celebrated his US Open win with the Trumps at a Trump property that evening.
Yeah. Was it not Bedminster?
Might well have been.
Bedminster. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, that earlier thing is like, Rory Mcilroy played golf with Trump. Is he somehow responsible for, does he bear any? No, absolutely not. Interestingly, I don't know if you saw.
No, but to be fair to him, and no one is saying anyone who played golf with Trump bears any great responsibility. No. But Rory did come out subsequently late last year
and said he wouldn't do it again.
I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah, and absolutely, he did make it clear that, like, without explicitly saying is that, look, I wouldn't vote. He actually did say it. I wouldn't vote for Trump if I could vote in an American election. It's interesting. I don't know if you saw. Did you see Nicola Sturgeon throwing her bit of shade? So there, apparently, according to Peter Swindon in is it the Sunday Post or whatever Glaswegian newspaper, is that there's military preparations taking place at Prestwick Airport, consistent with the arrival of Donald Trump post the 20th of January. And then Nicola Sturgeon apparently said that come to play golf is not what I would consider to be an essential purpose. So basically she's saying, don't come here because you are not allowed under the terms of our lockdown.
Yeah.
So
and I saw the clip. She said it in a sterner voice than you did as well.
Yeah.
It was like it was just disdain. Drenched in disdain, and I think she made a quip about how she was quite pleased to hear that he would be vacating the White House, so yeah. I mean, really couldn't have made him more unwelcome.
Well, then it opens up the possibility that he might come to Trump Doonbeg.
And he'd be very welcome by the locals.
He would be very welcome by the locals. I'd be curious as to how Micheál Martin would deal with that. Given that no one else can play golf in Ireland.
Cayley band out to give him a welcome as he comes down the steps of the private jet. You're right, Fionn, in terms of individuals playing golf with Trump. They've clearly made a decision. A lot of them respect the office of the presidency and have gone down that route. But we can't ignore that golf has welcomed Trump with open arms.
Absolutely.
Has emboldened them, encouraged them, done everything possible to feel that he is a president that is good for golf.
Yeah. Like none of us have a problem because I know we have we've listeners obviously in the States, and a lot of them are Republican, and they're like, you can't talk about Democrats and Republican like this is good and evil, and sometimes I think we're guilty of doing that a touch. But like Trump is a whole other level. But
Trump wasn't a Republican until what, the year before Trump would have been like what they call in America blue dog Democrat. Like he would have been a natural Democrat. He's Queens-born, New Yorker, and even though he accrued wealth, that traditionally his main, this is the guy who was friendly with Hillary Clinton, like once upon a time, and invited Sir Bill and Hillary were guests at his wedding to Melania. Like it's not, that's somehow, and you're absolutely right, Joe. This isn't about bad Republicans versus good Democrats. But it's about a swathe of political opinion in the United States that is so to the extreme as to be dangerous to democracy. Not like as in, ooh, I mean, look, geez, I watched Joe Biden's speech or his little comments last night, and I kept thinking, Jesus, he's all the energy of a bingo caller in a retirement home. It's like, oh, sweet mother of God.
He has really
stumbles out.
overachieved. He has overachieved big time, this boy.
Yeah, hey, I can just see him going, top of the house, 88. You know, it's like, oh my God. But you're absolutely right. But I mean, but there is no, and the thing is that Trump is a malign presence under any democratic norm. Well, like when you consider the last 4 years, is who are the people that he seemed to get on best with internationally? Autocrats. Like, this is a guy who fights with you know, democratically elected leaders. This is a guy who's like, he made a big thing about how friendly he is with Kim Jong-un. He's Erdogan is a big supporter. Bolsonaro in Brazil. These are all men who have absolutely no interest in democratic norms. And whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, whether you vote Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, the Labour Party, it doesn't matter. What we all have in common is that we agree that democratic norms have primacy over everything else. These guys don't. They do not. And I have seen nothing, I have read nothing in 4 years to suggest to me that he does. All of this, and I'm going to say it's absolute bollocks about, like, you know, we have to protect our elections. He couldn't care less about the election if, like, he has no interest. I'll tell you, this is the one that made me laugh, is 2 of the Congress people that were elected from Georgia, Republicans, they went down to Georgia with Trump to, you know, to do the stop the steal. And one of them, I can't remember her name, so forgive me, but she was asked is like, well, you have a problem with the vote in Georgia? And he goes, absolutely, it was stolen, 100%. He goes, but you don't have a problem with your vote where you won? And she's like, no, absolutely not, just the president's. But on the ballot, you vote for the president and the people for Congress. It's the same ballot. So explain to me why a duly elected representative in the United States is so stupid or so cynical as to say that this ballot, oh, no, it was stolen for the Democrats, but the ones with my name on it are okay. It's madness. These people have no interest. None whatsoever. And so for that reason, yeah.
I'm out.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Back to golf, sorry.
Well, God knows where. It was Van Jones was saying last night, we don't know if this is the end of something or if this is actually just the start of something. And I'm sure there are many golfers who will look back as time continues to go on and wonder why they played golf with Trump and where does this go over the next 5-10 years. And how complicit were they? I'm not sure. But again, that love that he felt by having some of the world's greatest sports stars spend 5-6 hours of their time and feel privileged to do so.
Yeah.
Feeds into that confidence, that arrogance.
Yeah, because I don't think their influence is great in any real terms. Like, I think even if Tiger Woods had objected to him in the most vociferous, attention-grabbing way you could imagine, it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference. You know, ultimately, I don't think they have contributed in any way. But the silence was deafening, that's for sure. And it was generally more than silence. It was a ringing endorsement. I'm going to segue because we got to kind of touch on some golf as well. Yeah. So we'll see how all that goes down. Tournament of Champions, we're back. We're in Hawaii. We're at the Plantation Course, which with each passing year doesn't feel like the best name for this golf course. But we're at the Plantation Course. And nonetheless, Dustin Johnson, not surprisingly, is your favorite. Justin Thomas, winner last year, is second favorite. John Ram, who we're going to talk about now, is third in the betting. Bryson DeChambeau had some interesting things to say about the speed targets he's going for this season. And then we're into Xander and Patrick Reed and so on. So John Ram, I mean, we don't need to say much about DJ in any great detail. It's keep the handbrake down, full steam ahead for Dustin Johnson this year. John Ram, Augusta, 8th hole, second shot. He hits a perfectly good ball, swings it well, and because of those tailor-made clubs and ball, the ball shoots off. He tops it, and he says, right, that's it. Callaway, I'm going with you. He is committed to a full bag of Callaway clubs, including a prototype driver, irons, and the new golf ball. He will also use an Odyssey putter and wear Travis Matthew clothing. I'm not too familiar with Travis Matthew clothing. Peter Ellis always said of Ram that he had a lot of leg in his trouser, and he does. He strikes me as a difficult man to clothe, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he pitches up this year. I have confidence in my new Callaway clubs, and especially the golf ball, which has really impressed me during the testing process, said Ram. And he reportedly shot a 59 course record, 59 at the Silverleaf Country Club in Scottsdale over the winter. I mean, first thought I had was Justin Thomas. I know maybe Callaway aren't as much of a punt as Honma were, but you just think
Justin
number
Rose.
2 in the world. What did I say? Thomas?
Yeah.
Thomas.
Sorry. Rose, of course, Rose. You just think, you know, number 2 in the world on the precipice of winning a major, and I don't see an upside. I mean, there must be a financial one, and he's made a big play, Nathan, out of the fact that he played Callaway in college, so maybe there's a residual love there and a residual kind of familiarity there, but everything is going well in John Rand's game, effectively, and he's done this, and you're thinking, it can't be worth the money. It can't be.
Unless, as you say, actually, the last few years when he wasn't playing with Callaway, he was itching to get back, and as he's emerging out of college, he signs a deal with TaylorMade, with Adidas, and there's always a part of him that would feel more comfortable back at Callaway, then it's all just fine. But even this week, it seems as though he's not going to go with all Callaway. I think he's going to go with the ball, which seems to be the biggest and most divisive talking point around this. But that even though he's had a good winter, he shot 59, still when it comes to tournament play, he's going to ease himself in to the full set of irons. Yeah, like the money's big. I'm sure the money is huge, but the money when you're the world number 2 for everything is big. Yeah, you can go to Abu Dhabi and the money is big. And I don't think it's Rory McIlroy moving to Nike big. So the risk that is involved, you got to assume he has weighed this up. But you look at his backroom team, you look at some of the people that he's around, their links with Callaway, there's obviously, this is a move that's been coming down the tracks for quite a while. And you hope that it isn't a Justin Rose. And even Rory had quite a few teething problems initially with Nike.
Yeah.
I know he won a couple of majors, but there were serious teething problems and serious questions about it, that we're not sitting in here in a year going, John Ram, he's down to 35th in the world. Can't believe he did that.
Yeah, because you just need a little bit to be off, and then you're like, is it the equipment? Is it my swing? I'll change my swing a touch. Or maybe it was the equipment after all. You can see how so quickly you get into just that dark hole that golfers can go into, and it can just eat up months and months and months. And then, like the ball, even Paul McGinley was chatting to us last year, and just even off air, he was making the point as we were saying our goodbyes, and he knew the Ram news was brewing. And he said, even Harrington, who played with Wilson, not at the forefront of golf clubs, was still very particular about the golf ball he played with. And it wasn't a Wilson ball. So even the golf ball around the greens, think of some of the shots Ram has played this year, that chip to win, I don't know which turn it was at this stage, but there's an unbelievable chip where he was, alleged to have, did the ball move, did it not move? But, the quality of short game, like that's years of playing with that same golf ball day after day, chipping it, getting used to the spin. Look, maybe, and he talked about the ball. Maybe they can replicate things, and the ball is the exact specification of what he was playing at TaylorMade. And there's a degree of like the footballer who wanted to wear a certain type of boots and put the black polish over the Adidas stripes or whatever. Maybe that's all there, but I just don't like the smell of this at all. This seems like such a needless momentum interrupter. Like this could be 6 months of the year and 4 majors are gone, Fionn.
Absolutely. I totally agree with both of you. I think it was interesting. And you said we talked to Paul before Christmas, and he did say it was like and perhaps as amateurs, we don't realize the extent to which the ball you play will have such a tangible effect on your performance. But, playing, he's gone like everything. So he's gone the Chrome Soft X golf ball, the Callaway wedges. He will put an Odyssey putter in the bag at some point, but he is testing different models at the moment. The Callaway irons, the Callaway driver. He's going to wear clothes made under the umbrella group owned by Callaway. It's like Callaway just vomited up all over him, and here he is. Hey, everyone!
Like changing putter. He's one of those putters with that red spider type putter, isn't he?
That's right.
Oh, I don't want to see that out of his hands just yet.
And it's so as you look. I mean, he speaks confidently about it. Money talks, and everything else is whatever. But yeah, I mean, he's taken. He's taken a massive gamble. Having said all of that, it was as you were describing the changeover, and it's the most dramatic changeover a golfer can make. I was thinking about something I'd read years ago about when Jack Nicklaus first went over to Europe to play in the Open Championship. Like, he wouldn't bring his clubs. Like, he'd contact someone and go, "Here, just get a set of McGregors for me, will you?" And he would literally go over, play a couple of practice rounds with a set of clubs he'd never seen before, and then go out. And like, obviously different times, but like, how far we have come. But
well, we'll see this week. I mean, he generally over the last 2-3 years doesn't go more than 4 or 5 rounds without a top 10 finish. So we're going to know pretty quickly where he's at. And it's what's key is how he reacts if there's a bit of a slump. You know, if he starts messing with his swing, or does he go down the equipment route, or is it a bit of both? And then you're just really into messy territory. Justin Rose won on his second appearance with Honma, but still things went awry. Sorry, Nathan.
Sorry, no, I think you touched on it, that it's maybe more a psychological thing as much as anything else. It doesn't seem that radical. I know that the consensus is that TaylorMade, by and large, produce the best equipment, that it's what people want to be playing with. But like, Callaway are a very established brand. It's not quite the same as Justin Rose going completely off kilter, but it is more if he starts the year slowly, the questions start emerging and you start questioning yourself. Now, maybe, again, he is so self-confident, it doesn't matter. Maybe he's not one of those players who is like Tiger Woods and picks up the club and notices it's half a kilo lighter than previous. Any of those things. Maybe actually it all just rolls in and he's not overthinking it and we're reading way too much into this. But the second things go wrong, the clubs come into question.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You can convince yourself it's anything. And if you're playing with all brand new equipment, it takes very little to convince yourself that there's something wrong with it.
Bryson DeChambeau's been talking. He still hasn't quite got to the bottom of the illness at Augusta, by the way, but he was asked about his targets for the year ahead. And he's targeting 210 mile per hour ball speed. He's managed 211 on the range. Now, in competition, he's never beaten 193 miles per hour in competition. So he wants consistently to hit 210 miles per hour ball speed. So I make it 1 mile per hour equals 2 yards. So he's looking for an extra 17 miles per hour. So that's an extra 34 yards off the tee he's hoping to gain on average. And if we just go to basic maths, 210 mile per hour ball speed times 2 yards equals 420 yard drives. Thank you very much. That's where he's looking to get to. That's still a big gap, though. He's never broken 193 in competition. So 210 is not going to happen tomorrow, I presume. Maybe it will.
Well,
this is the course to do it.
If ever there was a course in the tournament to do it, this is the one.
Yeah.
Like, there's holes on this course where if you have the ability to drive it over 400 yards, you're having to reel it in a little bit.
Yeah. The longest official drive ever at the Plantation course, 476 yards. Davis Love the third at the 18th in 04. Obviously, if you catch the hill, you know, mad things can happen. But Bryson going for hell for leather at this course means I'll be staying up late.
Oh, I think he's got a brilliant chance. I think he's about 9 or 10 to 1. Not only because of the distance and the wide open fairways, but I think McGinley touched on it before Christmas, that one of the reasons he doesn't like him at Augusta is that he likes to run the ball up to the hole. You can do that all day long at the Plantation from any distance. And he's played well there before. It is whether he loses the run of himself and realizes, you know what, this is the time I'm going to go. Think of the headlines if I'm going and I'm hitting these speeds. Does he believe his own hype?
The world record's 228, by the way. That's
right.
Kyle Berkshire. We should try and get Kyle Berkshire on the show. He's
the long drive champion.
Yes.
He's a legend. He's the Annika Sorenstam / Tiger Woods of long drive.
He said that in 2019. So 228 miles per hour. Bryson reckons if he gets to 210 on average, that's plenty. That's a sweet spot. That's where he can sort of stay on the golf course, but also dominate. So that's where his head's at.
Yeah. I was talking to a golfing friend this morning, and it kind of almost like just came out, and I was like, I'm getting so bored of this speed talk. And he replied, he goes, yeah, sure, but if he keeps winning, there's nothing boring about it. I'm like,
Bryson talk you meant. Right. That was so Freudian. You said speed talk.
No,
did you say speed?
Speed, not
I said
speed.
Spieth.
Here, look, Jesus.
It's like, what Spieth talk?
Jordan's not
82nd
playing
in the
this week,
world.
sure he's not?
No, and I really associate Spieth with this tournament.
Yeah, I know. No. I mean the speed talk. It's like this. It's just. And then my friend just goes, "Yep, but if he wins, it's not boring," and it's absolutely true. So the only thing that matters is you got to win consistently, not every time. You just got to win.
I don't think Nathan, he was exempt. I mean, the last time he won was the British Open. Rory could have played, but he chose not to.
So they have changed the Tournament of Champions this year. So Tony Finau is playing. Tony Finau hasn't won in 4 years at this stage. So they've invited more players. So it used to be such a small field where some years I think they've 8 at the top 10 in the world this year because of that. And it means it's a stacked field. They've got more players playing, whereas sometimes you might have ended up with 27 players playing for the 4 days. So they've invited 10, 15, if not more, extra players. So Tony Finau.
There's 42 in the field. Last year there was 35. So they've invited players who didn't win.
Tournament of Champions and other guys.
And other guys.
Now at the Tournament of Champions. My God, even Peter Lorre would acknowledge that's nonsense.
Justin Thomas he's got to be favourite, hasn't he?
No, it's DJ, and then it's Bryson.
DJ loves this place.
I mean, DJ.
I thought Justin Thomas has won here twice.
He won last year, certainly. DJ's won a bunch of times here as well. He hit the greatest shot of all time, according to Brandel Chambly, who we'll be talking about in a few moments' time. At
nearly the hole in one.
Yeah, Justin Thomas, who, by the way, this is kind of nice. So you know the way he won the PNC Father and Son Championship with his dad Mike, who's a pro as well, and it was all about Tiger and Charlie and
Charlie.
Well, we did. I feel like we did. Anyway, so Justin Thomas was talking yesterday, and it's like the Woods thing. It's really blossomed. It's nice, you know. Tiger's in a very different place. So Justin and his dad were over at the Woodses for dinner. Like this was just not happening 15 years ago. And you win like a WWE style belt if you win the PNC Championship. So Justin and his dad Mike show up at the Woodses wearing their belts. We had dinner with them at the holidays. We both wore our belts over there. We'd expect them to do the same thing. Charlie just laughed when he saw us, and Tiger said, "You know, well done, well played. It was all in good fun, but they fully expected it," which is really good. I think I heard that Mike Thomas that's my New Year's resolution, to stop saying Thomas. Mike Thomas is helping young Charlie out with his golf swing, actually.
Okay. Well, does he need does he need a lot of help?
Just as your dad does.
No.
Yeah. So
Mike Thomas is basically the elder Day. You can't go to a tournament and Mike Thomas isn't there.
Here's a challenge. Here's a challenge for you. This is the big one. Can you, Nathan Murphy, land us in 2021 Day on the podcast?
Dash is probably still about 10.
Dash, I'd say, is getting on 15, 16.
You think? What was Dash playing in the Father and Son?
I don't know. Look, whenever he's legally of an age, we should get Day on.
when we're legally allowed to contact him on the internet, and without the possibility of somebody knocking on the door and arresting you, we will 100%. Because he's been there, he's been front and center. But Mike Thomas has a great time of it. He's obviously exempt and is allowed on the course. Maybe he's under some sort of a coaching role with Justin.
PGA professionals, I'd say.
Exactly. So he's there for all the big moments.
Quick-fire questions to catch you off guard. DJ, how many majors 2021, Nathan?
1.
Fionn?
1.
Okay, I'm going to say none. Bryson, how many majors 2021?
None.
None, yeah.
I'm also going to say none. Yeah, I'm going to go with none. Rory McIlroy, Nathan?
None.
Fionn?
Oh, come on. If you keep asking Nathan first, it just seems like I'm copying him. Because I also agree, none.
Okay, I'm going for 1. Rory, don't
Which
let
one?
me down. Masters.
Okay. Woo.
Big commitment, Joe.
Let that sink in, everyone. Player of the Year 2021, Nathan?
Justin Thomas.
I'm going to go for Justin Thomas. Fionn?
Colin Morikawa.
Oh, Morikawa. I was wondering would I include it? I was thinking, will I include a how many majors Colin Morikawa question? And then I thought, he's not at that level. This is not required. Is there anyone else you want to mention as a name, Justin Thomas aside, DJ, Bryson, Rory aside, who you think strongly, where you're feeling it in your loins, will win a major this year?
Patrick Reed. I think Patrick Reed is some player. He's with David Ledbetter now. But I think he's so good. So unlikable, and yet so good.
Yeah.
I think Brooks might have a comeback.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
I heard that I was being hung out to dry on OTB AM this morning.
No.
For suggesting that, not by you, Joe. You backed me up. Fair play. Yeah, I think if Brooks can get his body in order, again, he'll be in that nice position where he's going to be totally forgotten about all year. Because
which he deals with really well.
And exactly. So this is just what he needs. That nobody's going to acknowledge the fact he has 4 majors and more majors than anybody else in recent years. He's sort of the forgotten man, which is, I think, exactly, and it's quite a dangerous place for Koepka. I think it's exciting to see how that sort of trio of Morikawa, Wolf, and Hovland develop over the next year. Is there another class coming through quite quickly then as well that can get to a level of winning PGA Tour events that quickly? But the three of them, Hovland in particular, from a European angle, to see can he go and compete all the time.
I mean, we touched on it with Paul McGinney. I do feel his chipping is odd. Like, and when a guy himself, now I know he just won before Christmas as well, but when even he's saying like my chipping is pretty shit, like quote end quote, it's slightly worrying. But he seems to kind of get away with it on certain courses, you know. Like,
so I'm going two Thomas, two majors for Justin Thomas, one for Dustin Johnson. And
so you're going 2
hang on,
majors
this year, 2 majors
this year, 2 majors for Justin Thomas. Yeah.
Holy shoot!
US Open, US PGA.
Wow. Good God.
Rory to win the Masters. Am I letting heart rule ahead here? Fionn, don't make that face. For podcast listeners, Fionn just smelled something funny there.
No. I think Patrick Reed for the Masters.
Well, as if 21's off to a rough enough start.
I know.
I think you can make a case.
DJ,
How can
no,
you not
DJ.
Make a case? Yeah, I'll be interested to see with DJ. Just reading around the Masters this week, feeling that it will be such a completely different tournament in April compared to November, and that maybe people are underestimating just how different the course was playing in November compared to a regular. Now he's shown he can play around Augusta in April as well, and he's going to be absolutely brimming with confidence. Rory will go in with a chance, but we are now nearly 7 years on from a last major. I stick with what I said right at the end before Christmas. I just want him to be in contention going down the back 9 of one of these majors, to even if he messes it up, even if someone comes through and birdies 3 of the last 4 holes to steal it away from him, and he'll get more stick for that than he's got for anything over the last 6 years if he puts himself right there. But actually to be in that position and to start having enough runner-up finishes where you're always in contention that all the other great players have as well.
Totally. He should almost give him a free pass. If I'm in contention, back 9 of a Sunday, job done. And then pressure's off in a perverse way. So we'll see. I mean, I'm really curious, I have to say, about DeChambeau, because we haven't seen the new DeChambeau at Augusta yet. No. That illness means he hasn't played Augusta. So if he can find fairways, then I think it gets very interesting again. Like the point you made, Nathan, is so right, that he can't roll the ball up to greens in the main at Augusta. So he can't be in the trees the way he was. But if he has a good week in terms of avoiding trouble and the length kicks in a little bit, like I think, didn't he birdied the 10th, his first hole of the tournament with 3-wood. You know, he's so long, he could guarantee himself any fairway he wants and still be right up there. So I'd like come April time.
Did he have par to start, but there were the 2 most ridiculous pars.
Oh, he missed a short put.
Should have been birdie double bogey.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So actually 10 and 11 is him in a microcosm at Augusta. And God, if we see the former, that's exciting. Right, 1 or 2 last few things. Greg Norman, I mean, if you've seen Greg Norman in the NIP, which we all have, you know that he's in good shape, but he is 65 years of age. He's having a terrible time with COVID. He's tweeting the last couple of days, this week sometime. I hope this will be my final update. Back in hospital after getting a positive result. The path to recovery is long. He said that despite being in good health and, if he does say so himself, having a high pain tolerance, the hideous virus was like nothing I've ever experienced before. Muscle and joint pain on another level. This is him talking. Headaches that feel like a chisel going through your head, scraping little bits off each time. I mean, for a man in that much pain, it's quite eloquent. going through your head, scraping little bits off each time, fever, muscles that just did not want to work, etc. Then my taste failed, where beer tastes bad and wine the same. At times struggling with memory of names and things. I mean, right there, you wish him well. Right there, he has ticked almost all the boxes for the worst aspects of this thing. That's just desperate. And he is a man who, jokes aside, is in phenomenal shape for his age. So, 65-year-old and very vulnerable to it for whatever reason. So there you are.
Yeah. Are we going to talk about the Lisa Cornwell story?
We are.
This is a doozy, I think.
Well, it is. Now, we are subject to different libel laws and defamatory laws to the United States, where Lisa Cornwell spoke to No Lane Up. So
she did.
I think we need to tread softly here. It's just a consequence of living with these antiquated defamation laws in this country, unfortunately. So, do you want to get the ball rolling, Fionn? I mean, so she was on No Lane Up. She had tweeted something slightly cryptic on New Year's Day because she was suddenly out of contract with the Golf Channel, and effectively she made the point that now I'm free to talk. And she said on No Lane Up that the reason she had tweeted that was not to garner sympathy or create some kind of intrigue as such. It was, in her words, effectively to let some people know that she's free to talk now and she's not going away. So she's had a big dispute with the Golf Channel, and she went into lots of detail on No Lane Up, and she's taken an action against them. Gender discrimination is what she's going under. So I don't know. What did you make? You've heard it, I presume, have you?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I mean, the kind of part that jumps out is there's one element, because as you said, is that, I mean, this is obviously subject to litigation. So she goes back, she details that the problems she had with the Golf Channel date back to, I think it was like 2014 or, a number of years ago. And she's outlined a number of incidences, including a bit of a fractious relationship with Brandel Chambly. But that's neither here nor there. That's obviously will be decided. But so on September 10th of last year, during the ANA Inspiration LPGA tournament, she tweeted that Jiu Lin, who is a Chinese player, had put a set of new irons in the bag last week. Mizuno Golf wouldn't give them to her. She had to buy them. Incredibly disappointing. And then doubled down, a follow-up tweet in a thread said she wasn't asking to be paid to play their irons, and she didn't buy them on a whim. She asked a tour rep for irons, and he made her pay for them. Wouldn't happen on the PGA Tour ever. And so obviously this is, became a bit of a story. And a number of LPGA pros came out in defense of her and said, yeah, absolutely, it's not the first time that has happened. And but what was interesting is that she was then taken off air for the Golf Channel. And the implication is that Mizuno, upset with being cast so negatively, had leaned on the Golf Channel, said, look, you can't have your reporter saying this kind of stuff about us. So they took her off air. And look, I mean, in the end, it's like, all these things are commercial ventures, and the club manufacturers, these are big companies with deep pockets. And so, they pay a lot of wages at the Golf Channel and elsewhere. But then, interestingly enough, the Golf Channel put out a kind of a tweet saying that Cornwell's original tweet was wrong. But then it was disputed by Mizuno and by the Chinese player in question in the whole thing. So this woman, well, Janet Lin, but Jiu Lin, who said, no, absolutely not. Cornwell was absolutely right. Leaving aside the specific details of it, what is clear is that the second tweet I thought was interesting. This wouldn't happen on the PGA Tour ever. There's no player on the PGA Tour, whether they're ranked in the top 100 or ranked 190th, who, if they were fitted for a set of manufactured clubs, that they would then have to wrangle or bargain to get these clubs. They would, because the tours nominally have an agreement with the manufacturers that they will provide the clubs for free because they are the tools of the trade. And so for this to happen, and then as a result, for her, well, as she's saying, is that she was for her to be taken off air, really throws the whole issue of the way women players are treated And the fact that like even a powerful force like the Golf Channel won't highlight this, it's a troubling thing. It's a troubling story. And so as a result, yes, so as you said, so Lisa Cornwell, who has now been released from her contract from the Golf Channel completely, she now feels she's free to talk, which then meant that she ended up on the No Laying Up podcast. And I have to say, obviously they're, they're not our podcast, but it was a very, very good interview. And she spoke very, very well. And yeah, it really was. It was an interesting piece altogether.
It's funny. I didn't think I thought the Mizuno thing was almost a little bit ancillary, or just like the culmination of relations already being down the toilet. Like, for me, it was very disjointed, and rambly at times. Like initially, she kicked off talking about a dinner with 15 Golf Channel employees, where she felt that one analyst who suffers from anxiety was being slagged off behind his back, and she confronted the person doing that. Seemed to be an executive at the Golf Channel at the dinner, and that was that. I mean, it's a slightly isolated story, but that was there, and maybe it plays into her overall point that there's a toxic culture at the Golf Channel, and the Golf Channel have not responded to this, so they absolutely deserve a right of reply. So
in fairness to No Laying Up, they did ask the Golf Channel for a response.
Yes, yeah.
And the Golf Channel said no. Or the Golf Channel just didn't provide a response. Yeah,
and the Golf Channel may feel, look, we've got our own platform. If we want to respond, we don't need No Laying Up to respond to. But then, I mean, the heart of it did, from my perspective listening to it, the heart of it seemed to stem, and she said everything stemmed from a dispute with Brandel Chambly on air. And I mean, she says that they never had a good working relationship. She felt he never valued her, thought she was particularly good. And somewhere late 2018, it culminated in a moment on air where she held her hands up and said that she didn't acknowledge a strokes gained graphic on air. He obviously wanted to be teed up on it. That didn't happen. She started talking about how, well, instead of doing what she said, like a Trip Eisenhower would have done, which is just understand she had missed it and then just pick it up and start talking about it live on air, because that's what you do for each other live on air. She alleged, and I stress alleged because it's only her side of the story, that Chambly started kind of waving his arms around and almost kind of pointing to her as if to say, like, this is what I'm working with. And she said that she then got on to the Golf Channel senior vice president and told him, I'm pissed off. You have to fix this. I'm tired of working in this environment with this man who treats me like I shouldn't even be there. And she says from that moment, it all stemmed. And she was taking off certain events she would have absolutely expected to do, including a big event, amateur event in Alabama, and where she's from. And she'd always presented that event. And she thought throughout 19 that she was increasingly marginalized as a result of this dispute with Chambly and the complaints. And she talked about the reporting structure being off because there was a husband and wife in positions where maybe it's just not best practice. Like it was her side of the story, and I've never been there, so you kind of have to. I found myself sort of instinctively, you're on her side because she's one person up against a corporation, and she's very likable and seems like a reliable witness and hasn't dreamt all of this up, I'm sure. But at the same time, I mean, and it was asked in the podcast, I didn't see the gender aspect. That didn't jump out to me. I mean, maybe my radar was off, but the presenter thought the same thing. I mean, you can have a crappy workplace environment. It doesn't always mean it's gender specific. Now, her lawyer then came on and talked about an instance which absolutely was gender specific. And so maybe it all just plays into a wider issue. And he mentioned as well several NDAs, cash in return for silence with employees who've had issues at the Golf Channel. And they're obviously in the midst of this move from Orlando up to Connecticut at the moment. So there's kind of noses out of joint, you suspect there. I don't know. I thought it was very interesting, but I kind of came away like not unconvinced, but just this all sounds a bit iffy. But you really want someone else to come forward, or you really, either to dispute it or deny it or confirm it or say something. It's very interesting because we're all voyeuristic in some ways, and you're like, ooh, behind the curtain, and some of the disputes and the phone calls where they're screaming at each other and all that kind of stuff going on.
One of the allegations she made in relation to the reason why I thought the Mizuno clubs issue was good, because it's not really about whether a player on the LPGA tour is entitled to get a free set of clubs that she's been fitted for, but that is obviously a story. It's the fact that she highlighted the injustice of it.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than have her employer back her up or investigate it further, that they bowed to the pressure of the manufacturer.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm
this is
less
the
sure.
allegation.
Yeah, and I'm
No.
less sure. I'm less sure from listening to it that you could say they bowed to the pressure of the manufacturer, or is it more a case of we have a real problem with Lisa Cornell? This is our chance to actually get rid of her. So
absolutely,
I'm not so sure if their most prized asset had filed the same report, would they have taken the opportunity? So that was my interpretation of that, as opposed to.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. However, she does, and again, this is an allegation. She's saying that a man in his 60s, this is on the back of her tweet, who was my boss, screaming and cussing me out and sending me home over a gender-related issue from a women's golf tournament during the middle of a retaliation, gender discrimination, EEOC case. I don't know what organization allows this to happen, but Golf Channel didn't do anything about it. I mean, these are strong allegations, and where gender politics are very much at the forefront of how we conduct business, both with others, but also within our own places of employment, etc. So it has become a highly sensitized and highly sensitive case. And you're absolutely right, Joe, to highlight at the outset that libel laws apply differently in our jurisdiction than they do in the United States, where it's on the defendant to prove that something isn't true rather than the accuser to prove that it is, if you know what I mean. Whereas here it's the other way around. So whatever hesitancy there is, but that all of that notwithstanding, and we don't know the ins and outs of the case, it is an interesting case because of these elements that we have been discussing. And you're absolutely, look, if Lisa Cornwell was the absolute star of Golf Channel broadcasting, perhaps there might have been a slightly different, and maybe Golf Channel's decision to terminate or to not renew our contract or whatever it is based on the fact that, like, look, it's just not a good fit for us. I mean, is it Davis Love III who was on CBS and then left because he was like, I can't do this, know? I mean, who knows? There's lots of reasons why people don't.
She argued she'd been there for 7 years and every performance review was good, So, Nathan, did you hear it?
No, I didn't hear anything about it. I saw some stories about Golf Channel until you brought it up this morning. So I'm going off what I've been reading.
What do you think? Plow on in there.
Well,
come at this unprejudiced, Nathan.
Here's my hot take. Let me say a couple of things about a couple of people that are very, very libelous.
Yeah.
Like the Mizuno thing was obviously a sort of standout and then brings a real focus, and I guess maybe the difficulties as well that I think a lot of people face, ourselves included. Now, when you're working for certain organizations, that the link between sponsors and the sport and your involvement and access and all of that, and I've no doubt that people in Golf Channel straight away, if you're critical of a golf supplier, they're their main advertisers, that there is going to be a response. I'm sure there's probably something in their contract. There's probably policies around all of that. There are always going to be consequences. You wouldn't have expected they would be that severe. And actually it was the sort of tweet that straight away, it's in the current age, it's very hard to rally against and say, well, actually, tough. You pay for them, the men get them all for free. But there's obviously a lot going on in it. So just let me think of a couple of libelous things. Who should I really go to town on, Joe?
Where's Peter when you need him most?
Yeah.
Let's revisit this next week.
Here's a couple of things I heard about the following.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, even I listened to No Lane Up this week, and they were reacting to listener reaction to the interview, and they were justifying it by saying, look, some of her claims were consistent with their sense of the Golf Channel, and they obviously have some contacts there. We don't. And my consumption of the Golf Channel and my knowledge of it is really through its website and the clips they put up there. So look, who knows? And they're serious allegations. They'll be dealt with in court, but that's kind of what's going on. It's worth a listen. And be curious to see if the Golf Channel respond. And secondly, if other colleagues, past or present, have anything to say about this. I suspect they won't be saying much. But yeah, there we are.
yeah.
There we are. That was all I had jotted down, fellas.
I think you have it all. That was it. That was all my notes. You literally, when you sent the text earlier on and you had it all really broken down with nice little kind of dividers in between the top, very professional. Like
you had starting the year as he means to go on.
You had the same notes, did you? Did you just copy my stuff the same way you copied Nathan's answers? Yes.
Oh my God. Pretty much.
The one thing I really do miss during COVID is that obviously we can't all be in a studio together. And when Fionn would come in just before our recording and he'd have 8 pages of notes.
Oh, yeah.
And then we could just take them off the printer and use them as a raw.
Make photocopies.
It was always relief when you said, could you print that? And I said, I certainly can, sir.
Oh, yeah, that's
3
right.
copies coming right up.
Yeah. I know, but like, when will this end, lad? March?
COVID?
No, well, COVID won't end till 2022, but like, March.
When will what end?
I'm just looking, and this is very much for our own immediate purposes. So from the 9th, so from Saturday, I'm technically allowed fly now from the UK into Ireland, but I have to.
You're not welcome.
I know, but so this is the issue. So I've started a new job, and
yeah, congratulations. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
well done, Fionn.
Thanks, Nathan. So obviously I haven't been able to come home at all, and so I saw the news the other day, and on provision of a negative PCR test, but I still have to restrict my movements for 14 days. And I'm like, all right, okay. And then I was thinking, it's like, well, Ireland is in full lockdown, so you can't go anywhere. I can't stay with anybody. All the hotels are closed. So, you can have all the negative PCR tests you want, but unless I'm going to sleep in a rental car and not see anyone except for outdoors and at 2 meter distance, one other person, then yeah, there's no point. So
I think the mood is very apprehensive at the moment. I don't know about you, Nathan, but certainly in the March to April period, as rampant as the virus was, I was hearing of very few people who had it. I heard of no one. And now suddenly the 6 degrees of separation has come down to like 2 degrees, like friends, siblings are starting to be hit with it. And that just didn't happen at all. And now I'm starting to hear, I'd say double figures of people who have it, who I'm one person away from. That was not the case in March, April. That's an anecdotal experience. Obviously there are anomalies everywhere, but
they're saying that 2% of all people in England have it.
2%, right. Yeah, I don't know what it is here. Are you having that, Nathan, that experience in Dublin? Yeah,
100%. Okay. And yeah, not even that far. Like my wife had to go for a test for being a close contact. Was negative, but like relations, friends, neighbors, you name it.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of them a bit confused as to how they got it. That we all understand how it escalated so quickly when you look at what happened in the pubs before Christmas and then everyone goes home. But an awful lot of people still had a very quiet Christmas and are sort of looking around going, did I get it in the supermarket?
Yeah.
Which is particularly worrying, which shows that, even if you are doing everything right, there ain't no guarantees.
Well, one of the things I've noticed is I'm the same. I know tons of people, I know a few people who have had it. And thankfully, none of them have had very, very serious symptoms, certainly none that required hospitalization, but still, it is COVID. But one of the things I've noticed, particularly with Irish friends, is that when they've admitted that they either have COVID or have had COVID, there's like a hint of shame in their voice. Like they're like almost ashamed of it. It's as though that somehow by admitting it, you're also admitting that you've misbehaved or you haven't followed the rules. And almost, I don't know anyone who hasn't. Everyone slips the rules a tiny, tiny bit, I guess. But I don't know anyone who, partied or did something really stupid at all. I mean, this is just like a highly contagious airborne virus that people catch. As you said, Nathan, you can get it in the supermarket. You can be walking down the street, it's just, that's how the nature of this is. And, but have you guys noticed that there's a sense of like, almost like shame amongst people who have had
it's probably changing now a little bit because so many people have it.
Yeah.
A little bit though. I don't think I would have rushed to tell the world I had it if I'd had it.
Really? Well, and sorry, just out of curiosity, I mean, one, it's whatever, it's your business, but is it because you'd be afraid of being judged?
No, maybe it's more just private business, actually.
Okay.
Relatively private person, I suppose. But
yeah, you are.
But I definitely,
it shows a mystery wrapped in an enigma.
That's true. Yeah. Murphy would have had
him.
Murphy would have had a 2-page spread. My COVID hell.
I'd be Claire burning it.
Right.
Sign me up for the vaccine. Hey, on a positive note, I spoke to John Giles earlier for American listeners, one of our greatest ever footballers, and he just had his second dose of the vaccine.
Oh, did he?
Great.
Delighted with life.
Doesn't that? I mean, and it's so worrying and it's so awful at the moment, and people are going through tough times. The knowing people who have COVID is scary. It's a nice thought to be knowing people who've had the vaccine now.
Is John in Birmingham or in Ireland?
Birmingham.
In the UK. Yeah.
So he's just had his second.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah, apparently they
first
flipped
before Christmas, didn't he?
Yeah, he was in that first week.
That's fabulous. So. That's great. Well, obviously, it's all hopes are pinned on the vaccine. All hopes.
Fellas, enjoy Hawaii, and we'll talk next week.